patience is now at an end. Adolf Hitler. Speech at the Sportpalast, Berlin, 26th of September, 1938. I am from now on just first soldier of the German Reich. Speech to the Reichstag, Berlin, 1st September 1939. In September 1938, a year before the outbreak of World War II, Adolf Hitler, Chancellor and Führer of the Third Reich in Germany, announced publicly that he would declare war if necessary in order to protect the Sudeten Germans in the west of Czechoslovakia. Hitler had always created extra living space, Lebensraum, for Germans in Austria and Czechoslovakia, and now used 3 million Sudeten Germans as an excuse to further his plans, claiming they were being persecuted. Hitler stated this would be the last territorial claim he made in Europe. However, although he disavowed having any aggressive intent towards Europe, he had already broken the terms of the Versailles Treaty. In 1934, he had signed a non-aggression pact with Poland, but despite this, he rearmed Germany in 1935, entered the demilitarised Rhineland in 1936, and in March 1938 annexed Austria. The Czechs, now almost surrounded by Germany, were worried about invasion. The Czech President, Edward Binz, appealed to the French and the British government for support. Neville Chamberlain, Prime Minister of Great Britain, reassured him that Hitler had promised the Czechs had nothing to fear. Born 20th April 1889 in Braunau, Austria. In 1920-21, Hitler became leader of the German National Socialist Nazi Party. In 1925, he published his autobiography, Mein Kampf, which set out his political philosophy and ambitions for his future of Germany. He became Chancellor, later Führer or leader, in 1933. And 1935, Germany started to rearm and began its rapid occupation of neighbouring countries. Hitler's declaration that my patience is now at an end over the Sudetenland preceded the signing of Munich Agreement with Britain and France, allowing the annexation of Sudetenland and Germany 3 days later. Within 6 months, German troops have occupied Czechoslovakia. In September 1939, Hitler's troops invaded Poland and Europe was at war. In a speech to the Reichstag, in which he announced the invasion of Poland, Hitler challenged the neutrality of Britain and France and celebrated Germany's non-aggression pact with the USSR. In an agreement he was already intending to break, committed suicide 30th of April 1945 in Berlin, Germany. At that time, Britain and France were still following their policy of appeasement. Hitler, though Winston Churchill, was convinced that Germany would continue to find reasons for takeover of Europe until opposed. Chamberlain believed Germany's claim to the Sudetenlands was reasonable, and in 1938 he agreed to let Hitler have the Sudetenland, believing this would prevent war. Hitler entered Prague in March 1939 and invaded Poland in September. Britain and France then declared war on Germany. Alienated and unsuccessful as a young man, Hitler had found a niche during World War One. In the comradeship of being a soldier. Decorated for bravery during the war, he was extremely bitter when it ended in defeat for Germany. As a result, he became involved in politics and made his name as a speaker, becoming head of a political party called the National Socialists, or Nazis, in 1920. In 1923, he made an abortive attempt to overthrow the Weimar Republic. In Germany, and was imprisoned. While in prison, he recorded his political philosophy in his book Mein Kampf, Mein Struggle. In this, he promised to bring German rule all European peoples who spoke German and to seize extra living space for Germans from Russia and Poland. He also planned to eliminate the Slavs in the Eastern Europe who he considered subhuman. Though some thought Hitler half mad, many were convinced by what he said. Gradually rose to power, aided by the Great Depression that left millions of Germans unemployed. Once Chancellor of Germany, Hitler went about creating a one-party state of which he was a dictator. Rule was maintained through a secret police, the Gestapo. Countless opponents of the regime were imprisoned or murdered, and Jews lost citizenship. In a law passed in 1935, having brought economic recovery to the country, Hitler then pursued his foreign policy to unite all Germans in a great single Germany, to destroy communism and to conquer and colonise Eastern Europe, establishing a 1,000-year Reich. World War II raged until 1945, and Russia invaded Germany in late January, and on 7th of March the Western Allies crossed the Rhine. The Russians stormed Berlin at the end of April, and by which time Hitler had survived various assassination plots by his own countrymen and was a physical wreck. He was cut off from reality, bitter and isolated, living in a bunker in Berlin 1945. And on the 30th of April 1945, he and his wife, Eva Braun, whom he had married hours previously, committed suicide, thus ending the Third Reich. I have really, in these years, pursued a practical peace policy. I have approached all apparently impossible problems with the firm resolve to solve them peacefully, even when there was a danger of making more or less reunifications on Germany's part. I myself am a frontline soldier, and I know how grave a thing war is. I wanted to spare German people such an evil. Problem after problem I have tackled with the set purpose to make every effort to render possible a peaceful solution. The most difficult problem which faced me was the relation between Germany and Poland. There was a danger that the conception of the hereditary immunity might take possession of our people and of the Polish people. That I wanted to prevent. I know quite well that I should not have succeeded in Poland at the time, had a democratic constitution. For these democracies, which are overflowing with phrases about peace, are the most bloodthirsty instigators of war. But Poland at the time was governed by no democracy but by a man. In the course of barely a year, it was possible to conclude an agreement which, in the first instance of a period of 10 years, on principle removed the danger of the conflict. We are all convinced that this agreement will bring with it a permanent pacification. We realise that here are two peoples which must live side by side, and that neither of them can destroy the other. A state with a population of 33 millions will always strive for access to the sea. A way to an understanding had therefore been found. And now before us stands the last problem that must be solved, and will be solved. It is the last territorial claim which I have to make, but it is the claim from which I will not recede, and which, God willing, I will make. I have only a few statements still to make. I am grateful to Mr. Chamberlain for all his efforts. I have assured him that the German people desires nothing else than peace, but I have also told him that I cannot go behind the limits set to our patience. I have further assured him, and I repeat it here, that when this problem is solved, there is for Germany no further territorial problem in Europe, and I have further assured him that at the moment when the Czechoslovakia solves her problems, that means the Czechs will come to terms with their other minorities, and that peacefully and through oppression, then we have no further interest in the Czech state. And that is guaranteed to him. I want no Czechs. But in the same way, I desire to state before the German people that with regard to the problem of the Sudeten Germans, my patience is now to end, and I have made Mr. Beans an offer which is nothing but carrying into effect of what he himself has promised. The decision now lies in his hands, peace or war. He will either accept this offer and now at last give to the Germans their freedom, or we will go and fetch that freedom for ourselves.